Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
10, 20 years from now, sitting down and people still talking about Calvin Jones would mean more to myself than winning the Heisman Trophy.
103 yards for freshman Calvin Jones here today. Nebraska, since falling behind by 2 touchdowns, dominating plays, time of possession, but they still trail it by a point. Jones again, big hole on the left. Jones for the end zone. Nebraska leads for the first time.
From the 47 of CU. Frazier takes the snap, gives it on a counter play. Jones runs behind a blocker, 45, 40, 35, 30, 25, 15. He's gone. Touchdown! 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 Tremendous blocking by Will Shields and Rob Zadiska. You'll see it on the replay if you're watching along. But Calvin Jones, who's averaging 9 yards per carry, busts a 47-yarder against the Buffaloes.
I think when you look back and you saw the tradition and you've seen year in, year out, kind of what we were able to accomplish, it not only said a lot about the coaches and the program, it also said a lot about the individuals and the athletes on the field.
Good morning. Welcome in to Hurrdat Sports Radio, presented by Centris Federal Credit Union. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here with you on a Friday. Obviously, that intro was very Calvin Jones-centric, as I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, have heard the former Nebraska running back and NFL Super Bowl champion, Calvin Jones, passed unexpectedly yesterday at 54 years old. DB, I know you were pretty close with him. How are you doing this morning?
We're good. I'm kind of I'm gonna stop doing this. I really am. I'm kind of an empath by nature.
Mm-hmm.
So that comes with some pros and cons, and obviously, as an empath, you're kind of a good listener. You understand people on a kind of a different level and kind of can detect real, not real, honesty, stuff like that. But the cons that I have to manage sometimes are, like I'll take on other people's kind of emotional issues.
Mm-hmm.
I obviously run high, so there's always this chance for burnout. And, yesterday was weird. And unfortunately, this has kind of come up a little too much, but there's always some kind of unique twist. And I know sometimes people will say, oh, you feel you were close to this guy, and you may kind of eye roll like, man, you can't be close to everybody. This guy,
yeah,
is a little different.
Yeah.
And I apologize for getting here so late. Just circled the block, right? Because I sat in my garage, and this was I just had to be competitive.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is for me, this is like a competitive show.
Yeah.
Where you got to summon like one good time, got to get it together. And, hang in there. We spent so much time together. He's lived with me.
Mm-hmm.
I went back to our text strand, and he had just texted January 4th. Wanted to put together an autograph signing deal to go to Grand Island in March. And, I care. People asked for comments yesterday, and I told a couple of the local media, not this time, right? Like, I can't be any good to you.
Yeah.
This time. So I apologize to those people. My mom, I was probably a little hard on yesterday. My sister, I know I was hard on yesterday. And, that was one of those guys where we did so many things, like kind of off the field, like just life.
Mm-hmm.
Right? He's gone through a ton, been through a ton, but he was so good-hearted. Like I think at the end of the day, regardless of decisions made and kind of what we were trying to, or he was trying to accomplish, like I just felt like at the end of the day, like he meant well.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of those guys that I mean, I wanted to be that guy.
Yeah.
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 And going to watch him, and I talked sometimes, people that are like close to me know, like I saved this picture in the World Herald. It's in you could probably find it. I don't know how you do archives or whatever, but it's my first playoff game at Northwest, and I'm this little scrawny, itty bitty dude, and just trying to get on the field and playing corner and sprinkling in some wide receiver, and I mean I'm just a runt. Man, we played him close at we were playing Central in the playoffs, and it was like 6-0 maybe at the half.
Mm-hmm.
Feeling pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, he just erupts in the second half. I think they ended up beating us. It's like 33-6 or something like that. And there's this picture in the paper. It's in black and white. And they're in their white tops, and he's got it's black and white, but I know, right? Because it had the sweet trim around the shoulders, and
like the old school Central jerseys.
Oh yeah,
those are sweet.
He just looked like $1 million.
Yeah.
And there's this little scrawny 135-pounder. These terrible shoes. Like no business, right? I mean, just class versus trying to get there. And I'm just diving at his ankles.
Yeah.
And it's en route to like some long run he ripped off, right? And I'm like, you know what? I'm not gonna feel bad about that. Like, I'm diving. I'm late. I'm not gonna get him.
Yeah.
But man, I like kind of relish in the opportunity, and from fixing his leaky oil in his vehicle in my driveway to kind of talking about being on the cutting edge of NIL and going back and forth with the university about forever a Husker and branding and wanting players to get their worth. And I mean, he's a big idea guy.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it was at other people's expense, but just a guy that I just the impact across the board. Remember, he came back after his first contract, and I was living out at Old Cheney, and it was me, Cluster, Tyrone Williams, Dumas, a couple of the fellas out on a weekend, and he came out there and came back to hang out with us. He talked me, and he didn't talk me into. He was kind of the catalyst, and to come into Nebraska. He was ridiculously close to my mom and dad, which I think for me, on a selfish level, makes this one a little tougher, just because of how close he is with our family.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, yesterday was clearly difficult, and I know he's going through it, and I don't know, man. Sometimes you just think about these chapters that are like playing out in people's lives, and it's like, man, always take advantage of the opportunities of when you get to be your own author. Like that's the best thing that I can say. Like, if whether you're young or you're in the middle of it or you're a little older, like if you have the chance to, and when you have the chance to fill in your own pages, you do the writing. Don't let anybody else write your narrative for you. So, I'm gonna get it together here in a sec, but that's just one of those things where it's easy to go back and I wish I would have, could have, should have, or I did this or we did that, but at the end of the day, man, I mean, he was, for me, to me.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody that I know he just, I don't know whether he had it or not. He would figure out how to get it,
Mm-hmm.
and he would try to do for you if he could. And I think that's kind of, he's just very other centered when it came to making sure that everybody else was okay, and even when he didn't have it. So
Yeah, kind of at his own expense sometimes.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
oh yeah, and yeah, it's widely, yeah, for sure. So that's my guy, and I just was reading back through kind of our last exchanges over a couple weeks ago, and I'll say this: the whole cheese reference you give me about just hanging on to that good piece of cheese, it ain't all bad, my man.
I know.
And I'm a do. I would kind of implore or ask if it's in you. Always try to find that good piece of cheese. I think you rest better. I do. I think you rest better, and you'll feel better. And I'll leave it at that. Hey, heck of a guy, man. And on the football field, he was so unselfish.
Mm-hmm.
Like sharing the load. I remember when he got hurt against North Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And
is that early in '93?
Wow. And he came over to the sidelines, and he was like, he had this little twang. He's like, DB, this is Omaha now. DB. And that's how he thought. It wasn't, man, I'm gonna have a chance to come out. My knee. What am I gonna? It was.
Mm-hmm.
He said, it's Omaha's time.
Yeah.
And he was just always encouraging other people to get theirs. I think of all the things that guys will tell you in the locker room or that hung around him is, he was always about getting the establishment. Seriously, he was always about, like, whether it was the NFLPA or college football, like he wanted people that were doing the business to get theirs. Like he was for, he just, that's just who he was. And, I got the next start and I laid the egg the week after that. And I remember him telling me that part of the maturity for being at Nebraska was the position being bigger than you. I'm not kidding you. The position being bigger than you. Like, and I always tell parts of that story because, you obviously you have to cheer for other guys.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, and I would always say, I don't know how, I don't know why, but when you can cheer for other people at your expense, that's when the magic happens. And so I just remember him kind of talking me through missed opportunity, still being able to cheer for LP and guys like Clinton. And he would harken back to, waiting his turn. You'd always say Scotty B, talking about Scotty Baldwin or, with D Brown and being on the same page for the greater good. Like, I mean, I struggled.
Yeah.
But part of hanging in there was the fact that somebody pours into you that's kind of gone through something similar.
Mm-hmm.
So it made it okay. So I always felt like I owed him.
Sure.
25 years later, I felt like I feel like I owed him.
Mm-hmm.
Hey man, whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's the power, I think, in finding a good piece of cheese. That's what I got.
Do we want to get to Lance here?
Yeah.
Let's get to Michigan Lance calling in about Calvin Jones. Lance, what's going on, bud?
Hey, good morning. Another one of these calls, DB.
Yeah, I'm kind of over
Had
it.
one yeah, man. Had one a couple years ago about Kamara Barti, and I mentioned then at the time that for me and my age group, I was 8 years old when Calvin Jones was a senior in high school, and when I really started coming into my own and paying attention and understanding sports. And so I would hear his name around Omaha. I would not only hear his name around Omaha, but then, watching the news, Channel 7, Michael Scott, Carol Schrader, and John Nicely doing the sports, watching his highlights. And so people like him and Kamara and Andy Woolridge were superheroes to me. And so with that age gap, man. And so I don't know what he was to you. I know you guys were closer, DB, in age, so I don't know how much of a fan you were of his because he's probably a little bit closer as a peer. Mm-hmm. But man, like, I don't know if it's revisionist history, but remember, can you guys still hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. But it just seemed like in the era that we grew up, and even the 2000s too. I'll say the 2000s too. Like when you heard about players being stars, when you watched them, they were stars. It wasn't this hyperbole that I think is now. You guys could correct me. Am I wrong? It seems like a lot of people are given greatness and stars, and then you turn them all. You're like, well, hold on, where's it at this time? I'm waiting to see this.
At that time, I think real time, he was a mythical figure.
Right.
I agree with you there. He was a mythical figure, and even talking to Coach Reed yesterday, the thing about him is that I love, and my personality. The thing about CJ that I love is, even as great as he was still always the other guy. And he was okay with that. He was never supposed to be the GOAT. It was Sherman Williams.
And he put up crazy numbers.
It was Sherman Williams. It was Kelly Yancey. It was
Leotis
Flowers. And he still loved those guys. He would say, DB, man, like, I'm not even in the discussion. I mean, you never watched Barfield run. I mean, I was like, Calvin, yeah, I did. Like, I watched Barfield, like, he torched Berquist, right? Like, he still was always deferring. He shared with the Raiders. He shared at Nebraska. Like, he would always defer to the other people around him. Like, the reverence that he had for Scotty Baldwin and D. Brown, it's like, you're the star.
Right, exactly. Like, hey, I can bear witness to that.
That's just. It was. I don't know, man. It's like. I'm giving him the runaround. I'm giving him the runaround with this autograph signing, and I feel awful for it right now. And it's like, even in the message, it was, you gotta capitalize on opportunities. It's just his personality. It's just his personality.
I can second that, man. When I became the head coach at Omaha Central, man, I got to meet him finally for the first time personally and talk with him, man. He sat down and talked with me for like an hour or so. And I'm a historian. So I'm picking his brain about Central, how he got started. Man, the dude was like, man, I didn't expect to play. He was like, I'm a sophomore. I'm just thinking I'm play JV, and they throw me in the game. Yeah. And I'm like, well, what's going on? And he's like, man, I have a good guy, run for like 80 yards and this and that as a sophomore. And people forget he only played 3 years now. He didn't play freshman with all them yards. You know what I'm saying? Like, he was a sophomore, and like you said, like, he was just what I liked about him, he was a fan of football like I was. Yeah. So he would talk about those guys, Leotis and those guys, as a fan. And I love that because I'm like, dang, man, you would have, like, you were All-American too out of high school. Like, you were All-American in college. And that was my other thing. Like, when it was good players back then, man, they did it on every level. It wasn't, this 5-star, he fizzled out. No, man, people produced. They showed up. There weren't a lot of misses when people predicted. You know what I mean? And Calvin, man, I even appreciate his struggles in life.
See, that's
like
that's where I'm at.
So
that's where I'm
so
at.
Right. So when he bounced back in life and his ups and downs, and even though he was a superhero to me, and it hurt me when I heard his struggles, it was like, oh man, and but then to come back and see him in a better light time and time again, man, like that's what I appreciate, the all around person that he was. Everybody just want to talk about the highs, but even with his lows, man, that guy would bounce back and have and his light will shine time and time again. And I don't want to dismiss that, because we all go through life struggles. And sometimes when we're on TV and we're in the limelight, people don't hear about them, or people don't, discuss them. They just want to just say, brush them to the side. No, man, this guy has some struggles, and he overcame those struggles too. And that's what life is about, persevering and bouncing back. And he bounced back every time. He had more than one struggle. It happened more than one time, but he kept bouncing back. And that's what I appreciate about him. So, man, God rest his soul, man. Thank you. He even told me stories about how he got to Nebraska. One last thing. Calvin Jones, Damon Benny, Martise Ivy. I talked to all three of those people about how they ended up to Nebraska. All three of them told me that it was not their choice. It was a parental guidance, whether it was a mother, a father, a grandparent. Nah, you're going to go to Nebraska. And their life turned out the better for it. So I say that to listening to all the listeners who have athletes as kids, or athletes, players who are listening. Hey, man, it's okay to take guidance from adults. Guess what? Sometimes they have your best interest and will guide you the right way. You're 16, 17, 18 years old. You haven't lived life yet. Listen to people that have wisdom. And that's another thing I learned from Calvin Jones. May God bless you all.
Lance, appreciate the call, buddy. I'm going to set up the show real quick just to buy us a minute here, and then we will return to the show coming back here in just a second. It's our Friday usuals this week. Tim Verghese from Inside Nebraska at 8 o'clock. 9 o'clock, we've got our guy Mike Sautter from Hurrdat Sports and NAB Preps. And at 9:45, we'll catch up with Matt Vrzal, former Husker and owner of Paisan's Pizzeria. Just for me personally, DB, I just really appreciate you kind of opening up and being vulnerable this morning. I know this is a really tough day for you, and a really tough day for all the people that knew and loved and cared about Calvin Jones. So thank you for being willing to go there with everybody and kind of give a glimpse into that part of your life. We'll be back here on Hurrdat Sports Radio in just a minute.
We will be back. 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 You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Welcome back here to Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. That's DBM Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage, and reminding you that driving is a full-time job. Phones, food, and friends need your attention when you are not driving. Stop the distractions. Just drive. This message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. Really appreciate all the comments on the YouTube stream, and a really great call from Lance there as we kind of discussed the passing of Calvin Jones. And one of the things that kind of you and I talk about a lot in different ways that Lance sort of brought up is that I think applies to a lot of things, is sort of embracing the beauty of the struggle too, right? Like there's, not just with Calvin, but even when we talk about things like being, in love with the process, right? That's sort of glorifying the beauty of the struggle to a certain extent, because you're not looking at the highlights. You're not looking at the pretty on-field result and the wins, right? You're looking at, okay, how did you get there? And it's not always pretty, right? And, I appreciate that we can have those discussions on this show, because there is a lot more to life, whether it's with Calvin Jones or with us or with the teams we're watching now, with Coach Rule's bunch Coach Matt, Coach Hoiberg, whoever, there's a lot more to it than whatever happens on the field, right? There's a lot more to Calvin Jones than his, 7th all-time leading rushing yards in Nebraska history, 2nd when he left the school, as Michigan Lance mentioned, in just 3 years. And there's more to as we watch Omaha men's basketball, as we watch them take sole possession of the Summit League for the first time in school history. There's more to it than like, oh man, they're on a heater, right? I've been critical about how this program's recruited locally sometimes, and not sometimes, a lot, if I'm being honest. And there's been a long road. I really enjoyed Coach Hansen, was a huge fan of his. Worked with him back when UNO was a D2 and he was going through that transition. And there's been a struggle in that program to get to this point. It felt like they were really close to knocking through that door and getting to an NCAA tournament with Tradeon and with Trayshawn Thurman and that group out of Omaha Central. And it felt like, oh man, they're right on the cusp. And then they kind of take some steps back, and then they go through the struggles. And they're at a point now where I don't know if they're going to make an NCAA tournament or not. I have no idea, right? But they're at a point where you can say, oh, there's real progress being made here. And that's great for the university. It's great for Omaha. I talk all the time about people assume since I'm a Creighton fan primarily that I hate Nebraska basketball. I really don't. I don't love how their fans interact with me sometimes, but I don't hate Nebraska basketball. I want Nebraska, the state of Nebraska, to have good basketball. That means Creighton. That means Nebraska. That means Omaha. That means high school. That means NAIA. Got Bellevue. I want them to be good at basketball. I want Doane. I want Concordia. I want UNK. I want everybody to be good at basketball because I love basketball, right? So this is not just an Omaha thing when you see them last night beat St. Thomas in this undefeated matchup in the Summit League. It's kind of a celebration of the struggle and how they've gotten here, even though the job's not finished, right? If this season goes south, we won't remember last night, but they will. They'll know what they're capable of. They'll know they can go, hey, we were on an 8-game winning streak. We were beating the other best teams in the conference. We're capable of that, right? Let's go back through the struggle and find it again.
Yeah, I can always appreciate that. And I think that's one of those things that kind of spur on competitiveness, right? And I know I talk about competitive stamina quite a bit and kind of what it means, and it can be on a multitude of levels, right? I have a couple of people that I'm really close to that are struggling with their health, right? And it's more of something that's out of their control. It's a cancer thing, and I watch them kind of fight, and I can equate that to, kind of what Lance was talking about at the tail end of the call with like overcoming and celebrating the struggles in a different capacity as somebody tries to fight through life, and not compare and contrast, right? It's the story of life, right? Just competing. I can look at that and say, and give some sports analogy to how people are doing life. And I'm not comparing like what Sharpie or Kevin is going through from a health situation with UNO basketball, but one of the reasons that I do sports, that I like sports, that I am drawn to sports, it's what everybody I hope hears when we try to talk about sports, is there's always some life component.
Yeah. It goes beyond the scoreboard.
Right?
Yeah.
And sometimes we just roll our eyes and we're like, oh man, it's just sports. And I'm in my head, I'm like, oh my gosh. There are very few comparable tools where you can say, hang in there.
Yeah.
This doesn't feel fair. I have to endure anyway. Or hang in there. I didn't get my chance, but you have to hang in there.
Mm-hmm.
Or this doesn't feel right. I came in behind the 8 ball.
Yeah.
But you still have to kind of hang in there. Like those are the parallels that I always try to draw for people that I want to succeed, do life. And a lot of times sports is the vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
And so I try not to get into the rankings of it because, well, then it makes it kind of on a selfish aspect. Well, that's not as much as I'm going through, or
Sure.
or because there's this easy case to get into a compare and contrast. Well, what about me? I'm going through this, and so I think generally to keep it safe, with the whole good piece of cheese is you talk about it in general terms, in terms of competing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was talking to one of my buddies, and it's in his nature to be worried about those that are closest to him, even though he's the one going through it.
Mm. Yeah.
And he's like, I just, my heart hurts for blank. I just want them to be okay. And I'm just like, hey man, all you got to do is fight.
Mm.
Like just fight. You hear coaches, you hear Coach if you want to take it to Omaha, you hear Coach Crutch and that staff talk about what it means for and to their players. They don't talk about them, right? They talk about going through it for the players. You heard Coach Rule, for the seniors, for
the guys that have been there.
Somebody else that's not them.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I just feel like we kind of just roll our eyes at that, like we're not really vibing with what they're saying. And I'm just telling you, there's something that's uplifting, that's empowering about going through a struggle for other people, taking it on head on because you feel like it's your responsibility.
Yeah.
Now, don't get me wrong, it's not always healthy, but it is admirable.
It is.
Right? It's not always healthy. But it is admirable. So to come out of the back end and watch what these guys are doing on the court, and I think we follow. We follow this program, Omaha, probably a little closer than most in the media, and it's not just because of the Mav ties. That's part of it. But you're right. It is about the community.
Yeah.
It is about.
I deeply care about basketball in this state. I really do.
No, I don't quit. It's not the only reason I tolerate you, but it's a lot of it because I know your heart.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I know you can say some things about Nebraska that you're probably like, oh man, here's the Creighton guy. But I know that's not where it comes. I know that's not the place that it comes from.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and that's. It's healthy too, right? It's good for. It was the first time I actually thought about laughing at you just now. So that's all. It's always funny because I did want to choke you yesterday, and here I am talking about grace. Okay, I'm coming back a little bit.
Don't feel bad. I do that to a lot of people.
But yeah, man, congrats to those guys for pushing through and a little perseverance, and they're not done yet. See, that's the cool thing about watching this team close. They got room for growth. They got room for growth.
Yeah, well done.
Monster.
Well done to Coach Crutch and the Omaha men's basketball team last night. I'm going to say, still recruit some more Omaha kids, please. That's all.
Yeah.
That's all I'm going to say. Nate, hang on the line here. We will get to you and your take here on Coach Hoiberg in just a minute. We'll be back. More Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next.
We will be back. will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Wrapping up hour number one here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill, where tonight you can come watch your Omaha Supernovas at a watch party here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. And then you can come back to Omaha on the 31st when the Supernovas are back in town at the CHI Health Center. You can get those tickets at at supernovas.com to see the Supernovas at CHI. That's supernovas.com to get your tickets. DB.
Yes, sir.
Let's get to our guy Nate here.
All right. All right.
Little,
Let's talk to Nate.
A little Fred Hoiberg with us this morning as we're talking some local hoops. Nate, what's going on, man?
My friends, how are you?
Good morning, man. How are you?
I'm fighting it, DB. It's tough, man. Yeah. You get the flu shot and then you still get it. I mean, it sucks, but we're gonna be okay. I will yet survive. Man, listen, who should not survive is Fred Hoiberg's job. I am. I really, and I know you guys kind of like Fred, but here's the thing. Fred is interesting. He's a lot like Frost in that his system is great, but it's dependent on a certain type of player at certain positions being able to do certain things on an extremely consistent basis. Otherwise, it blows up in his face. And the reality is Nebraska basketball is not going to be able to draw that kind of player with any regularity, which forces him to go off and hopefully grab somebody obscure like a Tominaga that's going to just out of nowhere blossom into being this great player on a relatively consistent basis. I mean, a Sejan has turned into, I mean, who would be a good example of what a Sejan is? I mean, this guy shoots like 8 threes a game. On a good night, he's knocking back 3, but we expect him to knock back 4 or 5. I've been reading the stat lines of these losses as they pile up. The number of threes taken is ridiculous. We are well past the point of recognizing that this team should not be shooting 30 times a game behind the arc. This is not who they are. It's not their skill set. It causes lost possessions. I mean, that Buttigieg guy is like Tony Kukoc's little sister ordering off of Temu. I don't even know why he was brought in. It's ridiculous. And then they feed these little one-liners to TV commentators that go, oh, he's a great transfer and he played for UCLA. He's terrible. I promise you, there's at least 15 guys across the metro playing at a YMCA on any given night who would do more than Verghese gel anytime you put him on the floor. And it's ridiculous. I mean, Bryce Williams doesn't know how to go draw a foul, yet he's an amazing slasher who should be at the line 15, 20 times a game. Nobody's going in there and giving him the old Roger Dorn, hey, go lean into one for the team. I don't understand it. I hated when Hoiberg was hired. I hated when Miles was fired. And I don't care about a great flash in the pan tournament appearance, because guess what? Miles had one of those too, and we actually didn't want to get rid of Tim Miles. We loved Tim Miles. And Hoiberg sits out there like some local version of Bill Belichick. Well, you know, I think they played really hard today. You know, they just got a little bit more aggressive and they were a little bit tougher. It's ridiculous. We've got to move on from this nonsense. It's not getting better.
Nate, let me ask you something. Is it because
Please.
It's repetitive, or because you think he's not well intended?
No. You talking about Hoiberg or Buttigieg?
Yeah.
No. Listen, Fred Hoiberg is one of the nicest human beings on the planet. I will never question his heart, his character, his decency. I'd let this guy babysit my kids. I just don't want him coaching my basketball team. No. He is in a repetitive cycle of again, he's like Frost. He's doubling down on, quote, his system, but not paying any regard. I mean, like Frost did it. Like, if you had Ohio State level talent, Frost probably would have gone and won an actual natty here. But it doesn't matter, because you're not going to consistently get Ohio State level talent now in the portal days. It's not going to happen. And I see it with Hoiberg. He's not going to just be able to go pluck, 5 stars that are going to come in here and shoot 40% from behind the arc, 25 out of 35 games. That's not reality. Eric Piatkowski was a once-in-a-century player for Nebraska. And that's not to say we haven't had guys that could do that. I mean, Kerry Cohorn could stroke, right? But he's not going to give you 40 minutes of good defense. He's not going to do much beyond that little stroking at threes. So what you get SG, and I mean, he doesn't do anything. He's a defensive liability. He's not a great passer. I mean, and fans got happy because he happened to stick a dagger in Nebraska's throat a couple years in a row. But he's not a great player. And to me, we're looking at now, we're going to waste another comeback year of Mask next year, who actually is a really, really good basketball player. And I agree, his presence would have affected this to a certain degree. But this is the same thing over and over. And what we're doing is we're becoming a rotating door of, let's just get this guy 1 year of eligibility. He'll play really good, and then we'll get him in the G League. Not even the league, just the G League. And that's kind of becoming the identity of this program.
Let me ask you something else real quick, Nate. So when you hear players, and we're talking about what Coach Hoiberg says at the podium, and players are kind of echoing the same thing. Where do you usually come out when you want players to help, or players to be accountable for what other players are doing as well? Because they're relaying the same message, and sometimes the guys that are the messengers are part of the message, so I get the complexity in that. But where do you come out on those guys holding up their end of the deal? Like, why shouldn't Mia take a foul, or why shouldn't Verghese be the first one off the floor, or to get in shape, or Bryce to get downhill and get fouled? Because I'm not necessarily in disagreement with the what. I'm trying to figure out the why.
Okay, so several things there. One, I agree with you. I think a good thing in the culture is that they're all parroting the same thing. But the problem is, if I'm Blackbeard the Pirate and I've got 6 parrots and I teach each one of them to go, Polly want a cracker, that doesn't mean all 6 of them want a cracker. Understand what a cracker is. or know how to get a cracker, even if they really are hungry and understand that they want a cracker to eat, right? Like I, as Blackbeard the Pirate, have to show you, hey, this is cracker. This is what cracker looks like. Eat cracker. Cracker make you feel good. You're not hungry anymore. And you have to, and this is a big thing in the Army, you train by the numbers, right? And you have to ingrain in them what you're looking for. I don't think Fred has done a great job of that at all with any of the teams he's had. And that is something I think Miles was very good at, right? Building that chemistry that creates identity, that creates organizational culture, that whether they're great or not, because the culture is strong, eventually you're going to start winning some games. And you're certainly not going to get beat by 40 points by an average Michigan State team. Like, that's not going to happen, right? So in terms of getting them to do the how, I don't think it's in them, right? Like, we want to have this society that says anybody can be anything and we can teach this skill. And because you have this skill, you're going to become this. But this is the same thing that goes back to the LeBron-Michael argument, right? You talk about guys like, when you say GOAT, it's slap your mama to be the best. And that's Michael, it's Larry, it's Kobe, right? And then you have your other tier of guys who are exceptionally gifted and talented. Your Magics, your LeBrons, right? There's nothing wrong with their talent, their skill set, nothing. But if you got to start a team tomorrow, I'm sorry, you're taking Larry, Kobe, and Michael over Magic and LeBron all day. I don't care if he plays 100 years. It's the way it is, right? And it's the same thing. You cannot grow or coach some of these attributes. And Fred has done a really bad job of examining on the recruiting trail, on film, through the JUCO and portal ranks, saying, this is what I need. This is what the mentality has to be. You see with the football team, right? Prior to Nash and Ty getting here, when's the last time a guy just behaved like Christian and Jason Peters? I don't care about the talent level. When is the last time they were a dog on the defensive line in the middle? There's no dogs on this team.
Nate, appreciate the call.
There's talent.
Yeah.
Appreciate the call, Nate. There's a lot in there.
I can eat the meat and spit out the bones too. So my big takeaway from that is that we've talked about, he was much, much, much more direct, unless you listened to Benning Bites yesterday. Mm-hmm. And you were sitting right next to me. And one of the catalysts for saying what I said in Benning Bites about taking a hard foul was part of what we talked about in the show. Mm-hmm. So I do agree. Like, if that's what you want, and I get it, you had to stay with him for the Polly wants a cracker thing.
Yeah.
But what he's saying is, it's just what we said yesterday about sometimes toughness looks like this.
Yeah.
Sometimes effort looks like this. Sometimes toughness for Bryce is probably not the same thing that it is for Mia.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Right, but they use toughness as like the Polly want a cracker thing. And as silly as the Blackbeard thing was, it just so happens that Mike and I were sifting through Pirates of the Caribbean Saturday, and it was on.
Yep.
And he's like doing the thing with the ropes, and he's tying all the crew to the boat. Mm-hmm. Like, that's the scene we were on.
They're like flipping over.
Yeah, I've never even watched that show. And it's funny that he brought up Blackbeard.
Yeah, I think that's the third one.
Which is creeping me out. But anyway, I just know because Blackbeard was the guy.
Yeah.
And so I get the analogy. Because sometimes I want, like for Verghese, and I'm not all out on Verghese like he is. I'm all out on him wanting to do something
that he's not good at right now.
That he's not good at.
Or that certainly doesn't help the team.
But I do think if a guy's going to go dive for a loose ball or jump into the media section and save a ball, I do know he's capable of playing hard.
Yeah.
What I want him to do sometimes, if you're talking about actual toughness, is get fouled and go to the foul line. Mm-hmm. Or when you're on the ground, again, I keep saying this, there's power in not being the last one off the ground.
100%.
Like,
yeah.
Seriously, like there are times, even with as great as Kalk is, sometimes when he gets hammered and he doesn't complain and he sprints back down the court to get a block or something like that, you're like, he didn't really do anything, but he did everything by just not staying on the other end of the court. Then as a coach, you can talk about the whole want a cracker thing. Hey man, we got to get back on D, and you can use that as a prime example. Like, I do think being definitive about what you want is a thing.
That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. More Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Kicking off hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, presented by Centris Federal Credit Union. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. Joining us now is our friend Tim Verghese from inside Nebraska. Tim, how are you this morning?
Hey, not too bad. How about y'all?
TV, how we doing, bud?
Not too bad. Can't complain.
Bodge. So I gotta give a look. I wanna shout you guys out over there at Inside Nebraska. You have some very astute folks over there that have compiled a very, very, very good depth chart. It's more scholarship distribution. Do you know? I think it's Huskies 33. Really, really, really good stuff. I'm kind of helping him trim and move some of the guys around, kind of as I see the depth chart being played out. Have you had a chance to look at that in depth?
Not super in depth, but I've taken a couple looks at it because like actually something I was planning to do here in Feb with Steve is kind of go through, and I think we have an opportunity here, not opportunity, but kind of create a very, very early depth chart and then a post-spring depth chart, and then because it could look very different.
Yeah. So
at 3-4 times across the year.
Yeah. So I think the more I'm combing through this and kind of the more I'm watching it, you and I talk every week with my main man here, Ravi. There's this part of me, and I'm willing to entertain it. I think because right now they're roughly at about 132. Okay. You're going to have the opportunity to get down to 105. I don't think 27. Is that 27?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 27 bodies roughly is anything to really panic over. I really don't. I think they're in really good shape. But there's a couple of positions that I think we're overthinking what's going on. And I want to start with offensive line, where they've got about 22 bodies, and that's including Turner and Teddy. Okay? So you got 22 offensive linemen. For a 105 roster, do we have an idea, or do you have a good idea that you think Nebraska should carry? Like, let's say if we're just starting with offensive linemen with an NFL mentality, trying to get down to a certain number, how many guys do you think the O-line should carry?
I think you should be shooting for somewhere in that like 15 to 20 plus range. Like you should be in that territory. I think you should ideally be able to be 3 deep across the board if you want to be. I think where Nebraska's at right now, I think that's like you mentioned, kind of I kind of wonder if that's a position they address, not address, but like, when you look at the numbers and things, I feel like that's an area where they may not be as many cuts as other positions just because they want to maintain that depth over there.
Okay, so go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, and especially
15 sounds low.
Yeah, I think my number is 20 internally, just in my head.
Okay,
but I also think you want to be able to run, 2 or 3 deep, but also have some guys that you can either redshirt and have for development as well, right? So that's how I kind of get to 20, because Nebraska is probably going to continue to count on heavy doses of development on both sides of the line, I would think. So I would guess they'll probably skew heavier there in terms of numbers than they would other places.
For sure. And I think 15, I say 15, that's just like the lowest you could go. Like I get concerned if you drop below 15.
Okay, so should O-line, I want to move on to D-line here real quick, because I think for radio's sake, I do want to kind of go through the names, but I don't know if we can retain them really quick. So I'll go fast for just the offensive line. Okay, so you got the young guys, you got Hammerbeck, you got Torres, you got Marks, you got Tapu. Then in the next group, it's Bricks, Landon Davidson, Fennessy, Peters, Pyle, Tumawa. Next group is got Brandel, Gatula, Knutson, Matracek, Segrin, Sledge. Then Evans, Kanak, Pritchett. Then the senior group is potentially Corcoran, Latofsky, and Prohaska. Okay, so you can whittle those names as you please. Now go to D-line real quick with 18. So you've got Petashak, Simpson, Terry, Hofkin, Lafotu, Murphy, Ochoa, Unwarni, Borchers, Keneally, Keona Davis, Goldman, Gabe Moore, Van Poppel, Jalen George, Linhart, Dylan Parrott, the only senior, Elijah Judy. That currently sits at 18. Are you comfortable there?
I mean, no, I wouldn't be. I mean, I think you're comfortable with the number. Okay. But I think what I'm uncomfortable with is the lack of true interior bodies. high-end interior bodies, and I think that's something they're going to look to address potentially in the spring, through the spring transfer portal, if they can find that reserve interior defensive tackle. My concern there is really just the interior of that line, but I like the depth there. I think on the D line specifically, especially considering what this defense is going to evolve into, where you are going to have like your edge rushers are going to be technically outside linebackers. I think you're fine at 15 to 18 defensive linemen. I don't think you need to hold 20 plus on the D line, even in a developmental setting, because I think moving forward, I think you're going to see like, hey, you have Cade, Malcolm Simpson, Tyson Terry, but then you look at the bodies they're recruiting in 26 and beyond with Phillip Simpson and some of the names in the linebacker room right now. I feel like your edge rushers are really going to come from that outside linebacker or in that outside linebacker room.
Okay. So I'm apologizing to Ravi real time for kind of hogging the next two, but I'm going to go through linebacker and DBs, and then I'll let Ravi take running backs here. So right now at linebacker, we've got this exercise, you guys listening, because you guys love TV. We love TV. So this is a good opportunity for us to kind of lay out why I don't think we should necessarily panic or maybe overstate how complex spring could be. Because I think once we go through these numbers, you'll get a sense that this is, in my opinion, I think very manageable. And TV, if you can give me pushback, please do, because I think iron sharpens iron. Okay? So let's go to linebacker here, where you have 17 bodies. The young guys. You got Jones, Merritt, and Mooberry. Next group up is you got Duda, Gradney, Wacker. Then Jacob Bauer, McGahee, Mav, Dylan Rogers, Shavers Jr. The next group, Genatone and Stenger. Your seniors, Booker III, McCullough, Watson Trent, and Javen Wright. That puts you at 17. I put an asterisk by D-line because you think there's maybe some room to tinker there. How do we feel about linebacker?
I feel like this is another room where I think you're going to see some cuts, unfortunately. I just think this is a room that is a little heavy right now, and especially with, kind of I think there's also going to be some somewhat realistic conversations to be had here with some of the walk-on turn scholarship guys in this room, or that would hypothetically be turn scholarship guys in this room. I think this number, in my opinion, I think this number gets down below 15, maybe even lower. I think they get closer to 12 potentially at linebacker.
Okay, now the one that everybody's kind of panicking about, not panicking, but DB. Now there's 27. Okay. You want to carry probably no less than 20 or 21. Is that too high, too low? Let's start there.
I think 20 is perfect. I mean, because you also just from a numbers standpoint, from your base for the most part, you're playing 5 DBs. Like you need, as like of the defense, if you're allocating numbers, you need more DBs than any other position group on the defensive side of the ball.
So let me tell you why I'm not panicking over the competition in the defensive backs room. I'll give you the young guys: Turch, Vermas, and Bryson Weber. Now this red shirt group, you've got Benning, Diaforno, Guthrie, Donovan Jones, Preston Okafor, Prescott, Prude, Sanders, Tarver Jr., Evan Taylor. The next group, DeAndre Barnes, Mario Buford, Jeremiah Charles, Bly Hill, Justin Rhett, Ramir Stewart, Bryce Turner. The junior group with Kahn and Andrew Marshall. Your seniors, Branch, Buford Jr., Hartzog Jr., Singleton, and Sierra Wright. Plenty of, I wouldn't panic over that group. That's going to reveal itself in a hurry, and I don't think it's going to be that difficult.
Yeah, exactly. I think those names, off the top of my head, I'm not going to name names, but off the top of my head, you run through that group and you're like, okay, yeah, I mean, you could see 3-4 of those guys already just off the bat, probably aren't going to be here after the spring or into the summer, after this semester, those guys are probably gone. But you look at the rest of that room and it's like, hey, they've got bodies and versatility. And I think competition is going to be good for this room because I think, right now, the cornerback 2 question is who's going to be the guy opposite Sierra Wright. And you and I could list off like 5-6 names that could potentially win that job. That's a good thing. That's a good thing that Nebraska has that type of competition at the cornerback, the second cornerback spot. You have the versatility of a guy like Donovan Jones and a Larry Tarver, even Amari Sanders in some way. Those guys can play a little bit around the defense. Caleb can play, a couple different spots in the safety room. Where does Braylon Prude fit in? Like I kind of wonder. I kind of theorize this in the mailbag, but I kind of wonder if they take Braylon Prude and they essentially just say, "Hey, just follow Deshaun McCullough around and learn how he
as
plays."
Closer to a second level guy."
Yeah, as just like this.
I don't think that's nuts. I mean, I would definitely entertain that.
Yeah, I mean, because they're both big athletes that can play a couple different positions. Deshaun, coming out of high school and even at this point, is further ahead, but there's a lot of learning experience I think Braylon can have from just sitting behind a guy like Deshaun and learning, hey, okay, here's where I fit in Nebraska's defense. Here's what I can do. Because I think right now, Prude's not going to be, I don't think, ready to play this year. If he is, it's going to be in a rotational sense. But you look at some of the other guys in the room, like a Tarver, like a Benning, like a Amari Sanders and a Donovan Jones, like those guys might be ready to start and at least contribute in a heavy sense this next season.
As I looked at it, DB was the lead, and I mean, fool. Like we're not fooling anybody. Like I clearly know the room, but yeah. I've shifted. 3 weeks ago, I'd have been like, "Ooh, this is going to be really, really competitive," and it is. Don't get me wrong, but it's not going to be crazy in terms of trimming or revealing itself. Like, I think the DB room could be fairly clean. There's two more, and I want Ravi to get to one. How many numbers do you think are represented in the running back room as we sit right now? Do you know off the top of your head, TV?
I don't know. If you're factoring in fullbacks, I think it's like 7 or 8 right now.
So you've got on fun.
This is a bigger number than I think people think.
Yeah, we've got 9 currently.
Go through it.
So we've got Booth and Parker as your true freshmen coming in, Rowdy Bauer, Isaac Dickey, Mekhi Nelson, Trent Euler as that next group, Quentin Ives, Kenneth Williams, then Emmett Johnson is the old head in the room.
Yeah, you got no seniors in that group, but you got 9 bodies. Does that sound high?
Yeah, it's high. It's
the more people get into this, I think it's interesting
because you want to. I think like what I mean, you want to have 4 guys you feel like you could play, and then maybe 1 or 2 more.
You need. Yeah, I feel like 6 or 7 should be the room.
Do you? This is interesting. I could be talked in
because you're probably going to use.
I think you need 5 guys that can carry the ball at any point in the season.
So you figure you've got
even if you only get 3 ready.
So you figure you've got even if you've got 6 running backs, right? You got to figure like Liebentritt and Hoiberg and all those types of guys, and which I didn't even see Liebentritt on the list there.
No, I didn't. We didn't count him as guy coming back.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Lindenmeyer, like those guys are going to play a lot of the sort of like fullback H-back spots. So I think that tight end room is going to overlap a little bit with what would traditionally be the fullbacks in that room. So I'm talking probably 6 pure running backs. And then you figure, okay, Emmett Johnson's going to get carries, Ives, Nelson. I'm missing one that's returning or that's coming back, I think.
Mm-mm.
And then Jamarion. I would say those are the 4 I would expect to be like, I could give them the ball.
Did that number catch you off guard, Tim?
Yeah, I didn't expect that high. I mean, it's weird because like that's a position that, I mean, we have Emmett Johnson. People are talking about adding another one, but look at the numbers. Like, yeah, then the numbers are
I think so. What that led me to believe is there's a reason that they didn't bring in any backs for visits.
Right.
But let me give you another one. Did you get so? How many guys do you think are represented in the wide receiver room, Tim?
A lot.
It's a lot. It's 15 plus. I know.
It's 17. Does that seem high?
To me, it does.
Does it?
To me, it seems high.
Okay, run through them.
All right, so I've got on my guys coming in Carpenter, Mills, Mosey, Jones, which we don't know where Jones is going to ultimately play, but sure. Clark, Singleton, Smith.
Keelan, yeah.
Barney, Bell, Doss, Gilmore, Hunter, Bonner, Hausman, Mangini, Miller, and then Dane Key is the old head in the room.
Yeah, I mean, you could see some cuts there.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
But-
you've got it's kind of the same thing, TV, with the running back and the wide receiver room. And I'm not trying to be a jerk here, but you got a lot of walk-ons in both those rooms.
You're so
like you've got a lot of walk-ons, and you got 4 walk-ons out of the 9 in the running back room. You got, I believe, 5 walk-ons out of that wide receiver room. I'm not saying you got to cut all the walk-ons, but I did do the math for whatever it's worth. That if you just cut most of the walk-ons, it's 18. If you cut walk-ons that I don't think I've ever seen play, like special teams or anything, it's 18 guys. All of a sudden, that 27 is down to 9. So you're talking about 9 guys that you have to cut that you at some point thought were going to get real playing time.
That's too many. Oh, let me ask this. What do you think, TV?
Yeah, like, I mean, with the receiver room specifically, I feel like 17 feels like a lot only because I think you ultimately want to carry between 12 to 15. Like, I say a lot, but it's like you cut a few more and you're within the threshold of I think you want to hold. I think you want to hold 12 to 15.
Yeah, because we talk about this as like it's like super, like, oh my gosh. But like you kind of get down to it and it's, I mean, you don't have a ton of margin for error.
Not a whole lot, yeah. I mean,
you don't have a ton of margin for error, but you also don't have a ton of guys that you have to like make hard decisions on. Not that it's easy to cut the walk-ons, but you know what I mean. Like guys that you're like, oh, at some point I thought he could be good. Like you don't have a ton of those.
Yeah, but you have to build a whole room. So I don't want to necessarily discern between walk-ons and non-walk-ons as much as what that room needs to function at a high level.
But I mean, at some point we probably are going to make this distinction between walk-ons and non-walk-ons because like you're probably
not if everybody's represented. There's no such thing.
No, but I mean previously, right? Because you viewed those guys differently, obviously coming in.
Fair.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm kind of glad this is raw eye to you because I get like the authentic. This is TV in all its glory. How many bodies do you think are represented in the tight end room?
Tight end, I know is a lot. Like for what that room is probably evolving to and what it probably needs to be, and that's where like we talked about with the running backs room too. Where is the crossover at this point with those Heinrich Harburgs and
or like a Carter Nelson?
Right, exactly. Like where does he kind of fit in? Or Jeremiah Jones as well, like a guy that can play tight end, play receiver, play DB. You look in the tight end room now. I think another one like Eric Ingerson's a guy that could blow up to an offensive lineman, or does he? What does his offseason look like for him? Yeah, it's a weird. I know there's too many guys in that room. I think. What is it? Is it over 10? It's not over 10, is it?
It's 9. It's Flint, Ingerson, my main man, Danny King, Connor Shutt, Echternach, Markway. I'm putting Carter Nelson in that room because it's 6 in one hand, half dozen in the other. If Nelson isn't in the tight end room, then he makes 18 in the wide receiver room. Mm-hmm. Okay, so do with him what you will. Then it's L2, Luke Lindenmeyer, and H2O and Harburg. That's 9.
Yeah.
Does that seem right?
That seems high, especially for what this offense is evolving into. I think running backs and tight ends are going to get capped at 6 moving forward. I just kind of feel like you don't go above 6 in either of those rooms moving forward. I think quarterback, you run 5, maybe 6, but 6 is crazy. I feel like a quarterback. I think the tight end room is going to get some cuts or at least adjustments. Like guys I just don't think they're going to be necessarily considered tight ends or in that room.
Let me give you the jaw dropper. Mm-hmm. Kind of. We talk about quarterbacks and depth. How many quarterbacks do you think are represented on the roster right now? I think like what we know.
I think it's 6. I think it's right at 6.
It's 6.
Yeah.
Does that seem high?
That does seem high.
So I say all this to say, like, it seems like our fretting is misplaced.
In terms of which position groups?
Yeah. We've harped on DBs all offseason.
Yeah. It's because the number's the biggest.
I'm not sure when it comes nut cutting time that's going to be the biggest headache. If not, this is going to be highly competitive across the board.
Yeah.
Right?
I think the most competitive, like now that we're talking about it, you know what I think the most competitive room is going to end up being? Because I think there's going to be a separation between the top end and bottom end of the DB room. I think that wide receiver room. I think there's going to be some tough decisions. Like think about Demetrius Bell, a guy that like had, like during spring camp, he had like, social media by storm, like Nebraska, like, that was the name we kept hearing in the receiver room. And then you have Ja'Cory Barney and you have Hartley Gilmore now. And you look at Hartley Gilmore's film and you watch Demetrius Bell's film and you watch what Ja'Cory Barney did last year. And you look at those three guys and you're like, oh, you guys all do similar things. And, you figure Ja'Cory's the favorite to maintain a starting spot. But, Da'Keel Shorts is high on Hartley Gilmore. Demetrius Bell could come back and he's a little bigger than Barney. Is he a guy that, tends to take some snaps away? I think you're going to see some real competition. Okay, is there an established guy in the wide receiver and the DB room, or established guys you could see moving on from the program because they get jumped? Like, I'm talking guys that have played multiple games, like played meaningful snaps in multiple games.
Yes.
I agree.
Yes. I could see it.
I mean, we kind of already have in some spots. You said wide receiver in which other group?
The defensive backs.
So I was kind of lumping wide receivers and tight ends together, but like we saw Borkacher move on. We don't really know if he like just looked around at the state of the room or like what exactly that was. But that's a guy that I think most people would have wanted back.
Yeah, I think Nebraska would too. But I think the thing with Bork is I think he wanted the assurance of opportunities.
Yeah.
Because he's a fringe. That's a guy that's going to show up on Sundays on a roster, and we're going to be like, oh, yeah, I could see that. And I think he wants more tape than anything. So I'm clearly Team Bork. But, Tim, isn't this fascinating? And I'm glad it's you because, like, you think things through and you process. Like, do you feel like going through this list, and, again, shout out Huskies 33, like my emphasis has changed looking at names to positions. Has yours?
Yeah, very much so. Like I think again, like I don't think the issue, like the DB room, it's just I think more than anything we freak out about the number, but I think that's all one part of the reason of the concern in that room too is like right now I don't think that like off the top you could name the guys that need to go for sure. Like you could name that in other rooms,
but it's
like,
not not an egregious number.
Yeah, not at all. That's the thing. Like
27 isn't crazy.
No, you're only a little high.
Isn't it crazy?
Yeah.
It's like you look at it and it's like, oh my God, thank you for doing this because we get to like you can actually see.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's our guy.
Tim, you're Superman. Part of your beauty is you're good on the fly, man.
I appreciate y'all. This has been fun.
We appreciate you going through that exercise with us on the fly. We'll talk to you later, Tim.
Of course.
Coming up next,
soon.
We've got more Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities.
We will be back. We will be back. will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Welcome back, Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage. Getting into some of the roster construction, not on basketball this time, with the football team and
funny guy, you.
And the 105 limit that we're rapidly approaching this summer. But we've got a caller. I think he wants to chat a little football depth chart. Is this apostrophe?
Yeah, I haven't been called apostrophe in a long time.
What's up, Michael?
Yeah,
a long time. I'm on a thread with a bunch of guys I've known probably 30 years, and apostrophe L was the name that they called me forever. Now it's just Severe. So it's a good flashback, Robbie. I appreciate it. I feel young again. That's not true.
I flirted with apostrophe for a couple of years, and I've gone with light-skinned guy. That seemed to be a little offensive.
You racist, you.
Now let's not the last racial blast that was uttered on these airwaves between the two of us was you. That was just not very long ago.
Believe it or not, I was at the casino last week, and I got a guy yelled across the room, a guy that we know. He goes, Damon's still talking about you saying he sounded white or black. It was pretty funny.
Damon, in a way, despite the way he talks, can be a little black at times.
Wow. I was like, do you have to shout that across? I mean, I think that's out of context for a lot of people that are sitting there trying to get their plays in.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a couple of things. Clearly, I appreciate you yesterday. Good dude.
Yeah, man.
Good
Sorry
dude.
about that.
No, you. Fortunately, you know more than most. So that's you do with that what you will. But I did think it was funny. I will go back to. Do you remember the fight at your house that we watched, or do you remember me falling over the fence in the stories?
Not falling. First of all, it's a gate, not a fence. And so, when you tried to jump over the gate, of course, like most gates, it moved along with you, and you cut your leg open. And and then we sat there, and you guys basically just talked bad about all your former teammates. It was great.
That's not true.
It was a great discussion, though, man. I appreciate it. And, Hobbs was there, too. And Hobbs afterwards said that, it was just one of the cool nights to listen to you guys talk about the locker room. And, Calvin, I don't know if you remember this, but I used to always make fun of him when I'd see him because he had that tendency to get rid of the ball early. Yeah. So, like, right when he crossed the goal line, he got rid of it. And he had a play, I think it was against Colorado, where he didn't cross. Yeah. And so every time I see him, I go, man, you have about 10 fewer touchdowns than you scored because we had replay, man. None of those would have been touchdowns, and he would always laugh and bring it up. So, yeah, he was he's a good dude, man.
So one of the funny things, I appreciate the lighter side of the story. I thought you may get emotional on me, so I'm proud of you.
No.
He was the first that was okay with taking his helmet off.
Oh, right? Yeah. Right. It scored. Yeah.
And so I always used to tease him. I was like, I know Miami and Tennessee put the full court press on late before you came to Nebraska, but you can stop acting like a hurricane anytime. And he would laugh at me and he would say, man, listen, as ugly as this face is, nobody wants to see me, so I'm going to make them look at me. It was the funniest. It was so him, though, right? Like,
yeah.
He just, I don't know. It's just funny how that's kind of how he thought of himself. But
where does he fall on the list, DB, in terms of leaving early? I'm assuming he's the first running back to leave early, right?
Yeah.
High back?
Yep.
And nobody else really left early before him, did they?
No, but D. Brown did, remember. So it was kind of bang, bang.
Oh, the year before. Yeah. No, I remember. I remember where he got drafted. Yeah. I remember the fumble against the Atlanta Falcons in the playoffs. No, I remember. I remember D. Brown.
How about this guy? This guy telling my parents at the dinner table when we were just in the dining room table. We weren't even eating. We were finished. He stopped by to see my dad, and he said, "Man, DB, D. Brown ain't gonna be there forever, man. You need to get your head off your bunda and do what you need to do." And I was like, we don't even talk like that. Like,
that's funny.
Who says that? But anyway,
yep.
We're going through these numbers, and God bless the guy that put this distribution thing together. And I'm probably missing a guy or two, but roughly at 132, if you've got to get down to 105, have you tentatively gone position by position, like 6 quarterbacks right now, high or low?
High.
17 wide receivers, depending on what you do with Carter Nelson, high or low?
Yeah, and I moved Carter Nelson back over to tight end. I think 17's right. I think 17's good.
Okay. Running backs right now, 9-ish.
Yeah, I think that's a little high, but it's funny because I like to take a couple away, but I like to bring another guy in. So,
okay.
You know what I mean?
Tight ends, 9. High or low?
A little high.
Okay, O-line at 22, but it includes Turner and Teddy.
I know, and see, I think that number, just go and look, and I'm just looking at some teams in the Big Ten, 17 to 18, that's about what you're seeing on most of the rosters, so I would say then high.
Okay, D-line right now, roughly 18.
Yeah, that's about right.
Okay.
So when you say line, are you including the buck, the stand-up rushers, or what do you include? Just the down line, just a 3 down, or what are you including on that?
So like for instance, I put a guy like McGahee, and I put McGahee and Noonan with the linebackers.
Oh, really? And you still had that many defensive linemen?
Yeah, I mean, you want to go through it? So it's Petchak, Simpson, Tyson Terry,
Yeah.
Hofkin, Lefotu, Ashton Murphy, Ochoa, Williams and Nawari. Then it's Borchers, Keneally, Keona Davis, Mason Goldman, Gabe Moore, RVP, Jalen George, Cam Linhart, Dylan Parent, Elijah Juco.
Some of them go. Some of them got to go.
You know what I mean? But it just that's where I got it. And I kept McGahee and those guys and Noonan at linebacker.
Right. Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
So the 17 seem high.
That's high. Yeah. I think that's high.
So currently DB's 27. Does that seem high?
Yeah, it's too high. I think I know what you were saying about having 5 cornerbacks or having the way they play 5 DBs. Yeah, I get that. But still, some of those guys are going to be hybrids, right? Some are going to be able to do multiple things. I think 20. Actually, when we went back and looked, this is old, but I don't know if you remember when Frost got here, he was talking about trying to get the numbers of the wide receivers and cornerbacks. Wide receivers and defensive backs up.
Well, he called 14 career suicide.
Yeah, remember that? That was. So they wanted to get up to like 18 or 19
at the time in the DB room.
Right, and so, but I know it's changed a little bit, and the 105 makes a difference as well. So I think 20 would be optimal on that list because I mean you're not going to have many walk-ons, right? You're just going to basically have guys who can be in the top 3 in the depth chart, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I landed, Michael, is that you're going to end up, for the most part, not going to be exclusively, but you're going to, for the most part, end up cutting guys that you did not originally view as scholarship players. And that by itself, without even cutting all the walk-ons, but just most of who's left, gets you to 18 of the 27 you need.
And you've got 3 place kickers and 2 punters.
Yeah, and who's going to leave after spring, right? Guys are going to leave, right, aren't they? You got to figure they're going to see the writing on the wall. Even at some prominent positions, they're going to see the writing on the wall, and they're going to leave. We're going to have a second run of guys in the portal.
Yeah, I brought up to DB a name like Jaden Doss, right? A guy that
has
kind of gone back and forth between offense and defense. They like him, but they don't really have a place for him. That seems
right.
And then they just bring in 4, I don't know, a bunch of transfer wide receivers. You've got some of the guys, Demetrius Bell coming back that you liked last year. You've got 4 freshmen coming in as well. Like, doesn't really seem to make a ton of sense where Jaden Doss is going to fit in moving forward.
What about a guy like Hartzog? If he's sitting there come out of spring and he's not in the depth too deep, what happens with him? He's got to want to try to go someplace and play, right?
Yeah, I love him. I just talked to him. Van Poppel and Caleb were coming back from Bible study last night. They called on Bluetooth. I don't know, but I see what you're saying because he needed time. I'm a big Hartzog guy because he lays it on the line, right? Like
he's tough.
He does not cheat the game. So I'm always gonna ride with Hartzog, but I do think he feels and he's aware of the sentiment that people don't really appreciate him. That's the sense I get without him. He's not whining to me, but like I kind of feel like where he would feel that. You know what I mean? He's human. He's human.
No, that happens. Yeah, because he gets topped, right? Big wide receivers go over him and they get the ball, and people go, well, you can't play against big wide receivers. The guy tackles well and he fights. So that's the guy you'd rather have him than Tommy Hill deciding I'm not going to come up and tackle a guy at the 4-yard line.
So do you feel like going through this exercise, do you think our angst was misplaced or is it about right?
I think it's legitimate angst. No, I think majority of the teams around the country are going to be sitting there and making hard decisions on guys they want to keep. It's going to be tough. I hate this.
That's our guy, Michael Severe. Michael, appreciate it as always.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
More Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next.
We will be back. will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Welcome back, Hurrdat Sports Radio. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill, and brought to you by our friends at Centris Federal Credit Union. I know it's the time of year. It's still cold outside. You're stuck in the house. You kind of start looking around. You go, man, might need to get some projects done around here. Maybe you need a little extra cash to make that happen. Centris can help you out with their home equity products, whether it's a loan or a line of credit. It can get you the cash you've got built up in the value of your home to get some projects done. Maybe just pay off a little debt, whatever you want to do, whatever you need the extra cash for. Go check out centrisfcu.org to get more information and to talk to one of their experts to see which option might be best for you. Federally insured by NCUA and an equal housing lender. That's centrisfcu.org. Kind of wrapping up the conversation about the roster there with it's super interesting because
changed your mindset, didn't it?
A little. I mean, I thought people were maybe overstating a little bit. Like, I didn't think it was going to be that hard to get down to the 105. I do think it's kind of funny that, and what really shifted for me is which groups will likely see the cuts. Right? It's easy to look at the DB group and be like, 27 guys.
Yeah, it was just low-hanging fruit.
Let's cut 10 there and we'll call it good.
And I'm like, I just don't, guys, I don't think it's going to be like we think it is.
Like, there are cuts to be made in that room.
No question.
For sure. But there's cuts to be made in just about every room.
No.
And I hate using the word cuts, but it's for ease of this conversation, right? Like, it just kind of is what it is now.
It totally, and that's why Tim is so good at this. Like, just the ability, because it happens to us all the time. I can't remember who said it was, but it was like, man, sometimes the best conversations you guys have are the ones that just happen
that neither one of us know are coming
organically.
Yeah.
It's like processing through, looking through the framework. It changes your thought process literally on the fly.
Yeah. And now we were having this discussion off air. I look at it and I go, those guys that they kind of love taking flyers on with an athletic profile, the ones that haven't gotten there yet are probably some of the next guys up on the chopping block after the walk-ons.
And the beauty of it too, Ravi, is you could still see how Nebraska wants to operate. TK, Tim is the GOAT. How Nebraska still can operate as a developmental program in this space.
Mm-hmm.
It's not near as tricky as we would lead ourselves to believe this whole offseason. Because there's lots of narratives out there. And until you actually put body types to the distribution chart, to how you think Nebraska wants to play, because clearly, and Ken hit the nail on the head. He's like, look, if it forces you to think about your identity as an offense and defense.
100%.
Right? There is no.
Well, we kind of maybe like this guy.
Yeah.
You remember when
they've got to be saying, how do we want to play?
Do you remember when Bo Pelini kind of changed his philosophy on defensive tackles, and all of a sudden he wanted the squatty bodies and he wanted those people to kind of just plug up and stuff? It's really hard. You can't make mistakes when you do something like that.
Yeah.
You better be really defined in what your roles are and what type of guys you need to fill those roles, because there's no spots to waste. But I wanted to do an exercise with you real quick, okay? I'm going to do some real-time math.
Okay.
I'm going to ask you a position group. You tell me what number you want them to have.
Come on.
No, not because I just want to see what number we end up with as a total. So not pie in the sky, but like a pretty decent ideal. Okay. So let's start quarterbacks.
Hang on. So I need to do this in my head.
Okay.
So I need I'm gonna turn my calculator on.
Oh, I'm doing the adding for you, real time.
Because I need.
No, I don't want you to add real time, because I'm gonna do it real. I'm gonna add it up. I don't want you to be influenced by what the total is getting to.
Oh, man.
Because I want you to give me the number you think you want and see where that gets us.
Okay.
If that makes sense. So how many guys ideally would you like at quarterback?
I'll go 5.
Running back. You were a little higher than me and Tim on that one.
6.
Wide receiver.
16.
Tight end. Probably smaller than we think.
6.
Offensive line.
20.
Defensive line.
18.
Linebackers. Including rushers or edge rushers.
14.
Defensive backs.
20.
Punters. I mean, it can't be more than 2, right? Like
1.
Okay. Kickers.
3.
Ideally, the third kicker could do both.
Yep.
Okay.
You cross train them.
Give me a long snapper / general specialist, 1 or 2.
Well, they got him. Can you keep him healthy? You have to cross train a guy. I'll say 1.
Okay. You know what number that gives us?
123.
110.
Really?
You're only 5 over.
Okay.
Like, this is pretty doable. That's my point.
Yeah, I like that.
Like, you gave me your pretty ideal numbers.
Nice exercise.
And we're only 5 over. Like, that's not bad.
Yeah, and I was a little greedy in tight end.
Yeah.
Where else was I a little?
You were a little greedy in tight end.
Maybe quarterbacks.
You said 5. 5's right, I think. I don't think you keep less than 5. If you can.
Well, I could see 4 in a hurry.
Probably. Probably, but I think ideally you'd
So
like
that's
to keep
110?
5. Yeah, 110.
Okay. I feel good.
You could probably.
I'm certainly not. Like, this whole exercise, the last handful of hours, has been extremely enlightening.
Yeah.
Because it's not like we've been talking.
No.
It's not like the rest of these talking heads have been talking. Because
you were a little greedy at wide receiver.
You think?
I mean, just Tim was like somewhere between 12 and 15. You said 16. If I give you 14, that's 2 spots right there. You know?
I'm just telling you.
I get it. I do.
You start getting into the 12 range for wide receivers.
You don't feel great.
You don't feel great because you can't practice the way you want to.
But if you're greedy at tight end, maybe you've got a little leeway there.
So do you know why I say that at tight end? Because I think that's how they want to play.
I think so too. And I think they're going to use some, like I said with Tim, I think you're going to use some Lindemeyers and Hoibergs as sort of H-back types as well. Like think Chris Cooley more than George Kittle in terms of how they use guys.
Yeah, and I think, there's a guy, Tim brought up Ingerson, and I'm thinking to myself, that's a guy, like in my head, that is perfect for what you want to do going forward if you want to occupy multiple roster spots with one person.
Sure.
Because he's going to still continue to excel as kind of a natural pass catcher. He's got really good size, so he can be an inline guy too. And if you ask me to compare the two at the same age, he's a more higher. Bless the English language. I love Lindemeyer, but he's a more athletic version of Luke at the same age.
Sure.
Now we'll see if he continues to develop like L2.
Yeah.
But in my head, I'm like, oh fudge! If you can still work with this guy, and I get, because I mean, how often do I brag about Luke? Right? It's like
love him. And you were the only guy that mentioned him at all last year.
The only guy.
Like literally the only guy.
So.
And I was like, why are we talking about Luke Lindemeyer? DB, what are we doing?
Knock it off.
I was like, wait, come on, man.
I know.
You got Fedoni, you got Borger, and you're talking about Lindemeyer?
Because I could just no,
but he's a good ball player.
And I was in on Borg too.
Yeah. Both guys end up being really good.
So, that's why I do those kinds of things. Because you have to start thinking about I immediately start thinking about field boundary rover.
Sure.
You had tackling, committed to tackling. I mean, there's a reason that I think Caleb plays the field and he played the free behind Singleton. Because little do people know, that was Singleton's backup in the bowl game.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for that. Rover's a spot where it's okay, is there a guy? Is there a version of gift that moves to Rover? Is that Ramir Stewart? I don't know.
I don't know either.
My gut says no, even though a year ago at this time, I'm like, hey, keep an eye on number 32.
Yeah. Well, and there's the other.
So, I don't know. I think we assume some things about Rhett that aren't, I don't know.
I think he's going to get a shot, but
I don't
we'll
know.
See.
At corner, I like there's some guys I like. Some guys. And I said this 3 weeks ago, and I want to go back and get it because I'm not foreshadowing what I said I would tell guys that have been in the program a couple of years. Don't, to the good or to the bad, don't let this past performance define you, i.e., don't rest on your laurels, and don't bury yourself either because you think people already feel a certain way about you because you have a lot of new eyeballs, so you just got to play ball.
Yeah,
you just got to play ball. If I'm JJ, and I'm thinking, man, you guys did me like that at UCLA. Hey, water under the bridge.
Yeah,
water under the bridge. Hey, you put this guy in the bowl game and not me. Water under the bridge.
New position coach, new DC.
You
go figure it out.
You got to go back to competing. Get the dunk contest and all that other stuff out of your head and go play ball. If I'm Donovan Jones, I was the dime corner and I got pressed into action. Don't rest. How diversify your portfolio so you become expendable.
I do want to talk about the diversify at some point, but coming up next, we've got Mike Sautter here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Oh, yeah, no doubt, no doubt.
Mike Sautter.
Yeah.
Mike Sautter.
Oh, man, you're going to put me on the spot.
Mike Sautter.
Kicking off hour number 3 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, presented by Centris Federal Credit Union. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla, and we are joined now by Mike Sautter of Hurrdat Sports and NEV Preps. Mike, what's going on, man?
I'm doing all right.
Jerome, why have you not been here the last couple of weeks?
It's not a personal thing. It's not, I very much so still like you guys. I am just a little busy right now, and I have I only have so much time with my kids, and it's important for me to wake up and help them get to school right now.
Okay.
So
I got you.
That's the reason why, frankly, I'm not home at night like at all. So I feel like I need to be there in the morning. So that's it. Yeah.
Good for you. So I will not see you at Nebraska Michigan wrestling tonight.
No, I have to be at my game of the week for high school basketball. The one high school basketball game I'll be at will be Norris at Bennington tonight is one the game of the week this week. So
okay.
Yeah.
Do you feel like my West Side Warriors have a danger game against the team that I've been talking about for 2 weeks and the Papillion Monarchs?
A little bit. Not
I kind of do too. If West Side isn't dialed, they're all over the goddamn place.
Like they weren't,
they're starting to really drive me crazy.
Last Friday was a little bit eye-opening. Just looking at that score, I was like, "Whoa!"
Did you like my live texting? It's not as good as like Jacob or anybody, but
yeah.
I knew you were busy working, doing your own thing, because all you kept saying was, "Whoa, whoa, 26-3, second quarter, whoa."
I think they call that a slow start.
Yeah.
I think coaches will say that was a slow start. I was at Westview and prep last Friday night, which
was pretty exciting. Do you like the fact that Westview could win a nail biter?
Yeah.
That's new for them, right? When you're learning how to win, you got to win games like that.
Yeah, for a team that hasn't been there before, frankly, in big game moments like that, for them to get that done is, and they did it twice so far. I mean, they did it Tuesday night. They won a close one against Papio South, and now Westview, if they can finish off the week here, they'll likely be the number one team in our coaches poll on Sunday night. They're pretty good, and Taven Zephyr Murphy is probably playing like the player of the year right now. And it, I say this all the time, but I've said it a few times, but Amir Martin coming back, I guess, and playing under control has been huge for them. He had a huge game Tuesday night, and it's not just those two guys. I mean, like even Lil John Sims is playing he's playing really good. So
that Little John Sims. That dude is, I love that he's great.
No, he's tough. Like and when I say that, I mean he's small stature guy, but he's actually like he's tough and he produces stuff and he's not scared of anything. Trey Griggs hit a huge three for them. A corner three that basically
nobody in that family has never been afraid to meet the moment. I mean, I think that's just a Griggs thing.
Yeah, it is. They're not scared of anything.
I think that's just a Griggs thing.
I think it comes from their mom, to be honest.
Oh, I'm telling Pops. He's on the staff. I'm telling.
That's fine. You can. I think they pay attention to what I say here because my guy Tarp had some words for me when I said that they hadn't played anybody before December, before Metro tournament, and
Tarpley's in the city. He hears the same things that I hear. Like, they don't have to defend themselves anymore. I don't think. Like, now they just got to dial in and go play ball.
Yeah,
Tarp hears though. I mean, he knows.
He may or may not have gave me a headlock after I said that the next time I saw him. So.
You know the thing about Tarp that people sleep on, he's a tremendous boxer too. Very, very good boxer. So I'm going to suggest to you giving up about 221 pounds Keep it moving.
That guy is he's when I choose to have him be when I choose to go to a barber to get my beard lined up, he's the guy that has a straight razor on my neck.
Yeah.
So
leave him alone.
I don't know if I want to do that. And also, Tarp's a great guy. He's a friend of mine, but he's funny. Like, he is funny.
So who's two for you?
Probably Papio South right now. Like him or West Side or Prep or I don't know.
Okay, let me ask it this way: who do you trust playing the long game?
This feels like someone said this to me last week. I forget who it was. So I'm gonna steal what they said, but it was in conversation. This feels like a Prep wins a state championship year, just because like they're always kind of old, and then the guys that aren't are
they're in every game somehow.
Yeah, and the guys that are have played JV forever. Cooper Knight's one, and now they're kind of seniors. They wait their turn. They've been around it. They've been in the program. Like, it feels like when there's not the clear cut favorite, this is the year that Prep gets over the top and wins it. So I don't know. Like, they're scary. If you said right now, like, who's winning the Class A boys state basketball title, you would get probably 10 different answers.
I would say 4 or 5. I'd say 4 or 5 different answers.
The district seeding is going to be majorly important this year because home games for district finals and things like that. Like, no one wants to go to Kearney for a district final, right? Like, that's really hard.
I would say
or you have at Prep. Now, hey, look at Lincoln Southeast. They're not scared of going to Prep.
Yeah, but I don't know who they are, though. And they would still have to be Lincoln Northeast. You know what I mean?
Right. No, what I'm saying is, at Prep for a district final is they've lost the last 2 of those to Lincoln Southeast. So it's not that hard. But I think it just is going to depend on the matchups so much. And you could have a couple of 2 seeds or maybe even a 3 sneak in and make it. It's such a wild ride right now because it's starting to separate a little bit, but you still just don't know. Like, Northeast is pretty good because Lazarick Houston is really good.
Yeah. And player of the year candidate.
Yeah, he just goes and gets buckets, and they let him just go. And, they're scary too. And North Star just went to Kearney and won Wednesday night. So that's another kind of team in the mix there. LV West, the way they can shoot it, and they're so well coached, I think is a team that's scary. West Side has the look of it, but it's got to come together. There's got to be some maturity there from some of their guys. So,
Have we given up on my Mustangs, Mike?
No, there's they have the talent. I mean, they do. They've got to kind of find a way. It's one of those weird things that all from June until December we were like, oh, Millard North, yep, clearly the best team right now, before the season, and then they lost a couple games, and then you kind of forget about them. But they have a very good chance to kind of make a run and go on a heater here. Millard South's in that conversation too because they're their guy they're pretty healthy-ish. Isaac Jensen's back now. That adds another piece. He's coming out. He came off the bench on Monday afternoon in their win.
They also have a little bit of an eraser in Prince too, where he can guard your best player, and it's probably going to be a headache.
He can guard 1 through 5 very easily, and it's one of those do you like him coming off the bench doing that more, or should he be starting or not, or what? I mean, there's a bunch of different lineup combinations Miller South can have that kind of scare you, and especially if like a guy like Bernie Anderson's knocking down shots, then it opens things up, and they're pretty scary as well. But back to Miller North. I mean, Derek's got to just be the dude, like, and they gotta find that in him for him to just go out and be the guy. And he's kind of done that at times in his high school career, and it's one of those times where, like, all right, man, now's the time to just go be the man. And they got to just force feed him a little bit, I think, to open up the other guys like a Major Mosser and Corian Gatlin that can shoot the ball.
We're talking with Mike Sautter, Hurrdat Sports NAB Preps. Mike, I wanted to ask you about a tweet you sent out yesterday because, I like representing the guys from Omaha that are playing at a high level at the college level. So you sent out this tweet. How many NCAA tournament wins could this team have? And you listed basically all the guys playing Division I basketball from, the state of Nebraska currently. So I got to ask you.
I was happy to see you include Josh Dix. Because we forget about him.
For the purposes of this conversation only, I will make him an honorary member of the state of Nebraska. But he's our basketball Thomas Fedoni, right? We're going to loop him in just for this one, and then they can have Council Bluffs back in Iowa. But so who are your starters on that group? That's what because I was having this conversation with a mutual friend. I think you all know Jermaine. We were having this conversation about, like, okay, who would you start? What's your rotation look like? So I'm curious, where would you start?
Well, okay, Josh Dix.
You did forget one though. You did forget one.
Who?
Jaden Dawson.
Oh yeah, I did. Dang it.
Who's playing his ass off?
Yeah.
After you talk about overcoming obstacles.
Yes. Injury, all that stuff.
Whole deal. Like Jaden Dawson belongs on that list.
I also forgot Bashir, who's lighting it up for Monmouth right now too.
I was trying to explain his evolution to Ravi a couple of 3 weeks ago, and it's like Caleb said when he was yelling at Micah a few weeks ago at the dinner table. They, about the better sibling, and Micah was quick to drop. He wasn't even the better twin, so I would keep your mouth shut, Rob. When talking about the Bashir twins. Isn't that funny? Just a testament to staying with it.
Yes. I will say in that tweet that I dropped, I did say this is off the top of my head, and I might be forgetting some people.
Yeah, you might have missed a couple. I know.
Yeah.
You show some grace.
I did. I needed. And back to Josh Dix, though. Like, he played AAU basketball for OSA and Omaha teams like his whole life. So, yes, we absolutely claim Josh Dix. I do.
I also like Jason Isaacson, so I'm going to give him a pass.
Yeah. That team. Well, Chucky's the point.
It was good to Zoe too when she was teeny, so I'm all in on Dix.
You want to talk about overcoming Josh Dix?
With the gruesome injury right down the road.
Ooh, like that could have been a career ender thing. I mean, it just the fact that he's doing what he's doing is amazing. This is where I would go. Top of my head, not looking back to the tweet right now. Chucky, point guard, Hunter, 2.
The 3 is interesting, I think.
Yeah. Like, do you put
you got Selly if he's healthy. You've got I don't know if you want to play.
I wonder if Tanji could play with Hunter, but
so Tanji's where I went. I went Tanji as my 3, but you could
he would need Hunter to give him the rock.
Well, yeah. Theoretically, that's an issue.
Tanji's a bucket getter.
Everybody on this team.
Frelly's like the shooter, like guy, so maybe he's the 2.
You probably have to play Frankie at a 4, right?
What do you do with Saint?
Do you play Frankie over Jason Green or?
Well, that's the question, right? You got Jason Green. Do you like Saint as a 3 or a 4?
Right.
I kind of want to go small ball 5 with Isaac Trout.
Over Kyle?
Maybe like as an option.
Oh, that's tough.
Listen,
it's a good little problem. Depends on how you want to play.
Yeah, like stylistically, right? If I want more of a Creighton style offense, maybe I go Isaac Trout at 5 over William Kyle.
Because quietly who's a really good defender?
Who?
Saint is very capable of being a good defensive player.
Listen, I've been on Saint since he was like a sophomore at Millard North. So
you talk about another guy overcoming,
a ton. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
It was great to see him the other night, to be honest.
How about him just smiling and having fun?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you see the crowd that was there to see him after?
Yeah.
The line of people. That was incredible.
All in on Saint.
Yeah, with his family sitting in the 300 section. That was wild, by the way. That was a USC thing, not a Nebraska thing, just for people. The USC donors, I guess, decided that the trip to Lincoln was like the away game that they wanted to go to. So they got the behind the bench seats, which then forced Saint's mom to be at the 300 level.
Do better, USC donors.
Yeah, it's like, what do you do?
So you got Chucky, you got Hunter. Who's your landing on 3?
Oh man, probably Saint, because I like the versatility there.
Okay, who's my 4? Isaac Trout, Frankie Fiddler.
Frankie gives you a little bit more again, versatility. I like guys that can kind of switch and do different things.
All right.
And 5 is probably William Kyle. Just because you need a rim protector guy.
Yeah.
And then I threw Benga Doc in there because of the length. You need some length on that team.
Well, you should have heard Tweedledee and Tweedledum arguing about that dude the other day at the dinner table. I had to tell Caleb Zip it. I was like, I remember that dude came off the bench to give you guys buckets out of nowhere, so I wouldn't say anything.
Right. That guy's evolution from
incredible
from after his junior year of high school to even the middle of his senior year of high school to now is remarkable.
Hey, Sautter, do you remember this? So when Papio South was playing Bellevue West, Coach Lewis was in the stands. And we were down at the media table during state. And Luke Ward basically dunked on the free world. And Coach Lewis was there watching Chucky and a couple of the other guys. And he came down. He said, I think that guy's pretty good. He put his head in between us when he came down to the media table. I was like, I mean, he put on a show for a stretch his last year, so it's good to see you include Warren in that list too. Because I didn't forget about him.
He's at Grand Canyon now, and second year there, played well, playing well, doing well.
Remember that dunk?
Yes, and that was was probably the time. Remember, after his high school season, he just blew up. Because he was this 6'9" dude that was super athletic and available.
Everybody needed a big. Yeah. And because if I'm not mistaken, there was questions about whether or not he'd be eligible. And so people kind of backed off. And then it became clear he was going to be eligible. And everybody flooded in like gangbusters trying to get a big at the 11th hour.
How about how we kind of gave Lewis, I think the media kind of gave him a little pushback when he clearly said, he was watching Chucky as a junior, and he's like, he's the best player on the floor. And everybody was like, yeah, well, he can't. And Lewis was like, man, I'm telling you guys, I like those tweets. Or those texts, and he came down to reiterate, just look how he controls the game. You guys can have everybody else.
On both ends.
I'm like, look, man, I'm not fighting you over that guy. Like, I love him.
But Chucky does it on both ends of the floor, which is pretty awesome to see. So
I do want to give you a sec because we follow him close, the two of us in the media, and it's not because we have any cares or concern for the guy that does their play-by-play, even though we do. But we both like Omaha. Mm-hmm. How cool is it to see Crutch and that staff kind of reinvent themselves, stay the course? They got Big Boy Summit length, man. These guys are pretty good.
They are pretty good. They're really fun to watch. Last night was the, fourth, fifth game that I've seen them play. I mean, I saw them play Mount Marty, right? Which they won by 40. So they're fun. And Markel
the Marty you love is Levinson, so that's good for you to
yeah. Omaha's fun to watch. And the changes they made to the roster, the additions they made to the roster this year, Lance Waddles as kind of the point guard, backup point guard. He started at the beginning of the year, and then they liked him coming off the bench more. And J.J. White has been great for them so far. Markel Sutton has stepped into that. Someone needed to step into that, like Frankie Fiddler on the guy role, and Markel Sutton's done that. Last night in the second half, he was
Incredible.
awesome, incredible. Like they just went right to him. First half, he had some foul trouble.
He's long, isn't he?
Yeah, he had 19 of his game high 24 in the second half. That's pretty good. And then the guy that kind of makes it work for them is Cam Thomas. So Cam Thomas, the junior college All-American, he was at Hutchinson Community College. He lets them do a lot of different things. One, he's long and athletic, but you have him. If you do this, there's times where they'll have Cam Thomas, Markel Sutton, and Jayshon Glover, who's really athletic, on the floor at the same time. You can switch everything.
I like the fact you're giving the defense some love because that's what they've been doing. They did it to Kansas City. They did it last night. When they want to sit down and guard, they're a nightmare.
So let me ask you this real quick because, for people that like me who haven't followed them as closely as you and DB have, tell me, in a minute, tell me what happened, right? Because earlier in the year, they're losing to Southern Utah and Alabama State and Abilene Christian and Montana State. And all of a sudden, and those are teams that are in the same neighborhood or worse than a lot of their opponents here in the Summit League. What happened that they got it to click all of a sudden?
That's a good question.
They're a matchup problem for the league because the league is traditionally just shooters and super fundamental playoff 2 feet, kind of not slow, but
very skill-based.
Yeah, skill-based league. It's a very skill-based league.
Yeah.
And this team is built to get up in you, guard you. They have length and athleticism. They're built way different than basically anyone else in the league. That I think has been.
They're not going to go out and shoot 38% from 3, but you're not either.
Right. Yeah. It's one of those where I think that really works. And they have a star, and then they have guys like Tony Osborne that's been in the program forever that can knock down a big 3 if you need him to and plays really hard. Their posts aren't, going to give them, Josh Street and Akawandu. I can't ever say his name. But they're gonna defend you, and they're long enough and they play hard enough. They're not going to give you 15 points, but they're going to defend that post really, really well. They did a really nice job against Oscar Clough. That if Markel Sutton isn't the player of the year in the league, then Oscar Clough at South Dakota State is, because he's averaging 35 rebounds a game or something crazy. So, I think that's why is the league isn't as athletic as they are. And
not
I
built
think
to deal with a team like this.
Yeah, they're just not built to deal with it. I will tell you though, St. Thomas, that team is extremely well coached, and they have guys that are not going to get off the bus. And you're like, what? That guy? You watch him.
We watched one give him fits. So
yeah,
he looks like he should be playing tight end. Your boy, who went to work for SC? He was filling in from the injury earlier in the year to what's his buckets, and he bowled.
Yeah,
yeah.
Sautter, we appreciate the time as always. Enjoy the weekend of games, and we'll talk to you later.
Good stuff, Jerome. Man, you were on point today, man.
Aaron Glenn, baby. Aaron Glenn.
We'll have to ask you about that next week. That's my daughter, Hurrdat Sports and NB Preps. We'll be back. More Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We'll be back. be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Welcome back, Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. It's time for Bet On It, brought to you by Warhorse Sportsbook, the best place in Nebraska to place your sports bets. If you were smart,
well, I smell bets.
You would have wandered on over to one of the casinos, either in Lincoln or in Omaha, and put some hard-earned cash on Santa Clara last night. As I told DB in one of the breaks, when he gives me a true random, I know that one's breezing right on by, because those deep cuts, that was always my strategy when I was really, really into college basketball, especially, at least betting on college basketball. I would go to these deep cut conferences because the lines are never right. And so I'd go and find value there. So I know when you give me a deep cut, It means it met your criteria and the line's probably not right. Easy money.
Yeah, what was that? 20? They would have won by 20?
Yeah, they cruised. So,
and I had the other one right too. I let the line movement scare me.
You did. The Maryland one?
Yeah, because at midnight it was 9.
Yeah.
And I was like,
and they dropped to 7.5.
I was like,
or no, it went up to 10 and then dropped to 7.5. It was a weird line. The movement was weird.
Midnight it was 9. By the time I'm talking to you, it was 7.
Yeah, it was weird.
I'm like, oh, fudge, everybody's gonna be on this.
It's okay.
And sometimes it's just like that. But it was safe as a kid, and they won outright.
Yes. And it's I don't mind though on ones like that where it's weird. By the way, go to warriscasino.com for more info. But on the ones that are a little weird like that in terms of the movement, I kind of look at it like a hand of poker, right? Instead of chasing a straight, there's sometimes I'm going to fold and I would have caught it. And I feel okay about it because I played the percentages correctly.
Always in poker, your best hands are the ones you get away from.
A lot, usually, right?
Over time. That is 1,000%
I think it was like Phil Hellmuth or somebody said, like, hey, really good poker players would have won about half the hands they folded, right? But that's how you protect you protect your little nest egg, you protect the pot. That's how I feel about your Maryland bet last night.
Why would you quote that guy?
I think that's who said it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure lots of people have said it. We'll give it a.
No, I might have been the poker.
Let's do Doyle Brunson instead. That make you feel better?
No, my fave.
Yeah,
you're in my wheelhouse now. Like
Phil
I
Ivey?
watch all the. Yes. How'd you know?
He's a black guy. I literally named the only black poker player I could think of.
Wow.
Okay. I think I have a drop from him.
I'm black and
That was your rationale?
Yeah.
I hate your guts.
Well, listen, if you were like, hey, Ravi, who's your favorite tight end in the league? Who are you picking?
Tony Macchiawi.
I'm not Hawaiian. No, you say Mark Andrews. Diabetic. Yep. Nailed it.
Oh.
Who am I rooting for in the Australian Open fighter? Zverev. Diabetic.
Yeah. Although, the Open is a mess.
It is.
I don't want to steal and go tennis hour, but can I just talk about competitive stamina and over talent as I'm looking at the women's side of the ledger?
Oh, you're talking about Coco?
Just in general.
Okay.
Golf, whether it's Osaka, like just mental fortitude.
Yep.
Is like it's
100%. Coco Gauff should never lose. She should never lose. She's the best player on the tour by far. She should never lose. And we saw, what was it, during the U.S. Open, where she lost her backhand and collapsed.
So, were we texting during that?
No, we were watching it here.
Oh yeah,
it was on during the show, and we're just like in real time watching.
How are you just gonna let this meltdown happen?
Watching her game disintegrate in front of her, and she's like imploring to her coach in the box, and I'm like, oh my God, she's gonna, and she got swept right out of there. It was brutal. It was hard to watch, but there is something to. And, those are just the examples. It happens on the men's side, too. Coco Gauff's just the best player it happens to on either side.
Would you walk in and say yesterday, the day before, I don't need to see Joker doing that to my guy.
Yeah.
How he's still...
Dude, 37.
So dominant.
Although he had to retire because of an injury, which I was bummed out about. Although I will say, I kind of like the tennis players standing up for themselves in the Australian. Because Joker did it with the media, and then Ben Shelton did it.
You don't have to worry about Joker.
No, he's gonna
say what he wants to.
He's gonna tell you what's on his mind. So you had Joker doing it with the media. You had Ben Shelton calling out some media members as well, and then yesterday you had Zverev because the crowd booed when Djokovic retired for medical reasons.
Yep.
And he's like, guys, listen, this is Novak Djokovic. He's arguably the greatest of all time. I'm a Federer guy, but most majors of all time. And then he brought up, this dude has won this tournament with a torn abdominal muscle and a torn hamstring. Yep. If that guy retires, he's hurt.
They're still mad at him over getting sent home for the COVID thing.
Yeah, probably. And Zverev kind of acknowledged, he's like, hey, I know you paid a ticket for it. I'm sorry. But if this dude who has won this tournament with those injuries says he can't continue, then he cannot continue. We saw it against his previous match when he beat who was he?
Who are we talking about?
Djokovic in his previous match got hurt.
Yeah.
He hurt the hammy.
Same thing that happened,
and he continued
with his knee. Like
He's 37.
The dude plays.
He's been doing this for 20 years.
He lays it on the line.
There's absolutely no reason for that. But I do want to get to some NFL picks. It is Conference Championship Sunday. I don't know if we forgot. But we've got the Commanders and Eagles at -6.
Yeah, I like the Eagles.
I do too. We mentioned this earlier in the week. I think the Commanders have kind of had their fun and we're done now. That's where I'm at with the Commanders. That, hey, you had your fun. You made a nice run. I cannot imagine a world in which the Commanders are in the Super Bowl. I just can't do it. And so that's an Eagles pick to me, easy. And as I mentioned earlier in the week, there is kind of it's not a super long history, but enough of a history of just randos making conference championship games.
Randos.
You've got like a random Phillip Rivers in there. You have a bunch of you have like a smattering of Falcons ones in there. You've got of course the Mark Sanchez, appearances back to back. Like there's just randos that show up in the conference championship games because things broke their way for a couple weeks. That's how I feel about Washington. I don't know if it continues or not next year, but this year I think this is the end of the road.
Yeah, I'm all in on, unfortunately, Philadelphia.
Which is weird because we've both this whole time been like, they feel gettable, right? They feel gettable. Washington doesn't feel like they can get them.
I know, and and Washington hasn't done anything to me to make me to get off the Daniels hype train. I seriously I just don't think
the roster's good enough overall.
I don't think the Commanders can get stops defensively.
I don't think the roster's good enough overall. I just don't. And I don't think anybody on that team is stopping Saquon Barkley.
And maybe Hurts won't be healthy
but I honestly think you don't even have to get that much out of Hurts. I think you can literally just run it down their throat and you can beat them with Saquon.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, I really do. I think that's the kind of groove Saquon's in right now. Like he's killing people.
Yeah, Jalen's got to take care of the ball, and you have to have some pocket presence this week.
Yeah.
What's the weather like? Did we get a?
I didn't get a weather report on Lincoln Financial Field for Sunday afternoon. I do know. I'll be honest. I did think about the weather yesterday, and I go, "Oh, we've got 4 northern teams. I'm not super worried about it."
Yeah.
I mean, Washington's borderline, but it gets cold in Washington.
And Philly on Sunday, it looks
38?
like 38, 39, and relatively dry.
Yeah. And honestly, Kansas City is about the same, 33, relatively normal and dry, so that's not bad either. The Chiefs are a 1.5-point favorite over the Bills. Who do you like?
I have completely flip-flopped.
You going Bills now?
No, I was Bills all week.
Oh, were you? I thought we just kept telling everybody how good they were, good the Chiefs were.
I was Bills all week. I think I'm going to take the Chiefs.
I have to.
I don't love it. I don't.
So I'm kind of at the same spot we were when we were talking to Arif Hassan earlier in the week, right? Where we go, they got the best quarterback, they got the best coach, they got the best defense. I think they've got the best pass catcher left.
It'll mess around and actually be a 1-point game. And
it'll be close.
1.5.
It'll be close.
The Chiefs will win. So I would probably play like the Chiefs on the money line.
Yeah, that's fair. At 1.5, a money line makes more sense anyway for me.
I would take the money line
because you're not going to have to pay a lot to get the money line.
You gave me 5 days to think about it. I went from I think the Bills will win to you know what? I'll take the Chiefs.
I think it's going to be the Chiefs as well.
I think 80% of the public's on the Bills too.
That's crazy.
Partly driving me.
It's a Chiefs-Eagles Super Bowl. That's Bet on It, brought to you by Warhorse Sportsbook. Matt Vrzal coming up next.
We will be back. will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio. Now let's find out what Matt Vrzal is better at. Telling stories or making pizza.
Matt.
Matt's an exceptional young man.
Matt Vrzal.
Happy birthday, Matt.
You know, Matt, he's a tremendous athlete.
Matt Vrzal.
Come on, Matt, I'm with you.
You know, like Matt Vrzal, you're one of the sexiest people in the world, but you're not one of the most beautiful. How does that happen?
Here is Matt Vrzal.
All right, Matt, thank you very much.
Wrapping up the show here on a Friday. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla on Hurrdat Sports Radio. We are joined now by our Friday friend, Matt Vrzal, former Husker, owner of Paisan's Pizzeria. What's up, Verz?
What up, dudes?
Hi, Matty.
What is that thing in front of Damon?
Oh, this is a friend of an associate of mine that's in Nebraska City, that comes to talk every Thursday. So they do like these cutouts. It's always somebody different. I have lots of these, Matty. So I pick one to post every day. I apologize for not answering your text yesterday, but as you can tell, I did the fight or flight thing and I went flight. So
yeah,
I apologize.
That's fair.
Right. I mean, you know better than anybody.
Oh yeah, that's fair. That was a rough day yesterday.
Yeah, appreciate you. I normally would just have been like whatever, right? But just in the process. So
yeah, I got you.
Anyway,
you're good.
We just were talking about like some of this NFL stuff, and this ding dong Shane Schillerberg is going to could wind up actually getting like Pete Carroll. He was the guy that I said this whole offseason was probably one of the best guys to be able to go get sounds like he's going to take the Raiders job, and I'm going to get to Chicago and some of these other jobs in a second. But
please don't.
Are you okay? Well, we can start with Chicago. Are you? So you're out. You're out on Ben.
It's terrible. It's absolutely terrible.
Interesting. Okay.
It's the worst. It's the worst pick. So here's what's wrong with Chicago. Yeah, they got nobody in there. Like, look at what they've hired. Tressman, passive, offensive guy. Eberflus, passive, somewhat defensive guy. And now you got Ben Johnson, who like nervously goes in there and is like trying to get the staff fired up, and they're just like, whatever, dude.
So you didn't like the comfortable being uncomfortable thing? I didn't know what that was, but I was like, ooh.
Should have had listen. They should have hired Aaron Glenn, okay, and come in there and instill this. I am not a Caleb Williams fan. I think Caleb Williams sucks, okay, no matter what offensive line you put in front of him, okay. So I got a 3-year plan. I'm like, all right, Aaron, you're going to deal with this kid for 3 years, okay? But you establish a culture where guys are on time to meetings. We dress professionally. We do these things. We embrace the greatest city in the world. We do all this stuff. You do this. And then in that 3rd or 4th year, then we're going to draft another quarterback. We're going to get rid of this guy, and we're going to get another one. And you're going to have it set up where we're disciplined, we're structured, we're organized, and then we go from there. But Caleb Williams, you can have him. I'll trade him tomorrow.
Are you being – I didn't know you really felt like this. I thought you were kind of still feeling this one out. That's not a horrible rookie season statistically.
You're correct, statistics. But what did he do that you can make a steady diet of living on? Like, what did he – like, he threw some just Hail Mary deep balls. Like, he's not Chicago. He just isn't. Yeah. He's not. And if you look at like how, like, I watch people, right? That's what I do. If you watch how like he's trying to be funny guy like during games and on the sidelines and stuff with his teammates, and they just like look at him and they just like roll their eyes like, okay, dork, whatever. You know, it's just like they have to deal with him. Numbers were great. I agree, but do not want.
I'm kind of surprised you're out on. Do you like Dennis Allen as a DC?
I don't mind that. I think they have a lot of nice defensive parts. About how committed they are to. I mean, I guess you're gonna have to sell them. Hey, we're gonna really need you to be good. Like, you're gonna have to keep us in games because this dude could go off the rails at any time.
Yeah, that presser was awkward. It was so weird. It was kind of a raw. I'm like, guys, this is still the NFL.
Yeah,
I would tell those guys over there in the locker room.
You know what I mean, though? Like, Chicago it's why I love it, but Chicago's a rough city. Like, you got to have a dog come in there.
So,
like, I'll be, truth be told, I was going to be perfectly happy if they got Aaron Glenn or Vrabel or Belichick.
Did you want McCarthy?
I wouldn't have minded him. He would have been kind of my last guy. But I would like the avenue that he had some like vengeance against Green Bay. Like, you'd be like, okay, show these guys.
So how about Pete Carroll? Are you a Carroll guy?
I like Pete Carroll.
Me too.
I think I know for a fact I will never be that old, number one. But number two, I will never have that much energy. Like, that guy he's on crack. Like, he's legit.
Verse, so I'm interested at this Caleb Williams thing. I knew you weren't a huge fan, but is there a quarterback that you'd like to see someone like that guy in Chicago? Like, is there a template you're looking at that's like, that seems like a Chicago guy?
Well, I've been on the ones that they passed on. Now, hindsight is 20/20, but Jaden Daniels would look pretty good. That didn't work out too bad. Bo Nix, I think, is a guy that fits Chicago better.
Yeah.
Like, kind of a tougher end guy. But yeah, hey, and maybe the Howard kid from Ohio State falls and they get him. I think he would fit in just fine.
Okay. Do you roll your eyes at kind of this is how this works, that now all of a sudden we're talking about like Will Howard as being like a top 3 round pick? The guy was totally off the grid, man. Like, haven't we got enough of recency bias?
I don't know if I thought he was good at Kansas State. I think it speaks more to like how quickly you can develop a player when you get them in kind of proper structure, or maybe structure that fits them better. Because his throwing at K-State was nowhere near what it was at Ohio State. Now, he has got the best wide receiver coach in the country and the best wide receiving core in the country. But there's just, sometimes you're just drawn to follow people. And I think that whole Ohio State thing after Michigan really could have went off the rails. But he kind of corralled it back in with the help of the defense. The defense is really, really good. And so I think it was just a good measure of what happened. But yeah, I mean, it's when you win big games, you're going to move up the board. I mean, that's the way it goes.
Yeah, it's interesting.
You going to take Riley Leonard over him?
No.
Yeah, no.
He said no.
I do think it's interesting you brought up his throwing, because I've said the same thing to DB, where he threw some balls this year that I just didn't know he was capable of.
Yeah.
At his time at K-State, I looked at it and I go, I was like, he's good enough as a passer, but he's a run first guy. Even coming in with Chip Kelly, I was like, hey, you're going to know who's really in control of this offense, Day or Kelly, based on how much QB run you get, because I thought Kelly would kind of lean into Howard's skill set there more. And then he comes out and that's a guy that can spin it a little bit in a way that I really didn't know he had in him.
The way they structure it, though, right? You go quick pass to get it set up, your slants and your little outs. And then, you send a few deep, okay, it's a quick read. Read this quick. If you don't see it right away, check it down and get it into the hands of the guy. It never hurts either when you can throw it to a running back and they can break a 75-yard screen pass for a touchdown. That's always helpful for your stats.
Yeah. One
completion, 75 yards and a touchdown. But
hey, do you like one of those guys better than the other, Henderson or Judkins?
Man, that's tough. I would do everything I could if I was those guys to keep them both. I got thunder and lightning, baby.
I like 32, but I like 32 better.
You can, that's fine, but you got a thumper and you got a burner. I mean, 32 can pick them up and put them down.
Yeah,
buddy.
He
is fast.
And he seems mean-spirited too. So I like that a little bit.
Listen,
he's always mad at something.
28. You better tell 28 at Nebraska to learn them angles. You better.
He's just
overkill.
He's just.
It's okay.
He's just trying to practice in such a way where he can get out of 35 and get back to 28.
I was gonna say, is he back in 28 again?
That's not the number he wants. He's gunning for something else.
If he's running this way, and you're running this way, it's okay to shove him out of bounds. That's okay. You have to fight another day.
Hey, I was joking with Ravi all the last couple of weeks that the Jacksonville job has been open, and I'm like, gosh, it's just kind of backwards because nobody wants to work for Balky. And then yesterday, Jacksonville gets rid of their GM, and now they're back in negotiations with a coach. And whether you like Cohen or not, or whatever, but are you surprised that more organizations, and you're a fan of one, that do things kind of out of sequence when everybody knows it's potentially an issue?
No, you need – listen, owners – the only one that's the owner that got rich in football is Irsay. And he has enough issues dealing with himself that's just their own individual problem. You got rich doing something else. It's much like the way universities are run. Let the meatheads handle the football. You go handle your own business, okay? Go out and get the best GM possible. And then get out the way. Let them run the organization. Let them hire the people. Because you don't know this world. You ain't from this mud. You don't know this. Go sell your oil or malls or whatever you do. Let the meatheads do the meathead stuff. You go do the nerd stuff. Stop meddling in it.
That might be the best line I've ever heard. Meatheads do the meathead stuff. You go do the nerd stuff.
You don't know this mud.
Verse, appreciate it as always. Have a good weekend, man.
Thanks, Matt.
More Hurrdat Sports Radio. We'll be back on Monday.
It definitely seems like time has just flown by.